Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Monday, May 19th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in beautiful downtown Lowell, and we're kicking off a new show, kicking off a new week here at Inside Lowell. It's a Monday, so why not a Monday with Marty, our good friend Marty Lorrey, former Lowell City Councilor, now one of the most respected political pundits and prognosticators in the city as well.
I don't know about that. I have some fun.
You have an awful lot of fun, and I love your looking back now on your predictions from January, how many have come true, how many are still kind of percolating all the past years. And we got some stuff, you made a big one back in January about, local officials and stuff getting arrested. We still haven't seen any in Massachusetts, but we're getting close.
The city council in Worcester is probably close.
We're getting really close. And I'm wondering, based on a lot of frozen activity, ice activity in Lowell over the last couple of weeks, will Lowell join Worcester and New Jersey in making national headlines? I'm going to get to all of it with Marty Lorrey. Plus, we've got an update on the Lowell School Committee race. Over the weekend, we posted a photo on InsideLowell.com. We got all sorts of news developing in Washington, D.C. over the current president, the past president, 47 and 46. Which one is going to get 86th first? We got all of that first. Let me thank our Daily Pulse sponsors. We've got Ray Booten. He's a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. He's also a certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, Ray Booten is your man. Find him online at realestaterayBooten.com. He had 3 closings last week alone. Busy guy. I smell another cruise for Ray and his beautiful bride. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint, the only health plan offering health care benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members at WellPoint. Your whole health is their whole point. Thanks to WellPoint, thanks to Real Estate Ray Booten. We got some other sponsors we'll say thank you to, but let's get right with it. Last week, Marty Lorrey, you called me on, was it Wednesday or Thursday morning you called me to tell me there's a whole bunch of activity going on.
Oh, I saw the ice. Yeah, I saw the ice trucks.
Vehicles and trucks and ICE agents up on Bridge Street in Lowell. And shortly thereafter, I looked on social media, and there they were. There were photos from what looked like the Hafner station.
Actually, I saw them on 133. They must have been getting together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
you saw them on 133. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they ended up somehow out on Bridge Street, and they had a row of people, like 8 people they were cuffed. They certainly were, apprehended.
I didn't take any pictures or put it on Facebook. I don't get into that.
You didn't, but other people did. And then the posts started coming. If you see any ICE activity, photograph it, videotape it, document it, call. They gave the number of an organization a call, and, we must resist, we must blah, 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 which out in Worcester the week before led to an altercation where Worcester police had to be called in to stop a mob of people from interfering with some ICE actions. We also had the situation in New Jersey where a couple of Congress members are facing potential trouble, including one who was, as they describe it, body slamming. I call it chest bumping an ICE agent. When I think of body slam, I think of Hulk Hogan.
Professional wrestling. Yeah. That's what I was looking for.
But it is called body slamming when you throw your body up against somebody. But anyway, are we going to have? You said someone's going to get arrested over this ICE.
There was no question in my mind somewhere in the country, and I was looking at more blue states like Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, California. The funny thing, I will say now, there's going to be a bill, from what I understand, going into the State House, the HALO Act, that you have to give 25 feet to any law enforcement agent. It's going to be interesting to see who supports it and who doesn't. And the reason why I say that, if you remember years ago, the protesters at the abortion clinics were really creating, I guess, some havoc. And I think there's a buffer zone around abortion clinics now.
Yep.
So there is, and there should be. That's a really touchy subject.
There was actually somebody was arrested recently for violating a buffer zone.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I don't know if it was in Massachusetts, but that's a national law, right?
I think it's might be national, but the two state reps who put it in, one Republican, one Democrat, were both former police officers, and they put in this halo bill for 25 feet. And that you shouldn't be, if someone's being arrested. I was a city councilor. You don't run up, I'm a city councilor, where's the warrant? No, you don't do that. I don't know what the police really have to show you. I mean, they arrest people. They don't arrest. They detain people, question them, and then things like that. So it's going to be interesting what comes out of Worcester. But that HALO Act is in. If you look at the mainstream Democrats, and I'm talking about the old liberal Democrats and the moderates, they're very quiet. You see AOC and Bernie Sanders. You see these congressional members attacking these facilities, but you don't see the mainstream Democrats doing that. I think they might have a shot in 28, but even in this state, you haven't seen the state reps coming out, or the state senators, really backing these actions. They're local.
Well, you've got, so that's an interesting point. First, you call them Main Street Democrats. I'm going to argue that the mainstream Democrats are now the leftists. I think the Democrats that you associated with, I think you guys are on the outside looking in.
They're gone.
Of that part.
I think they're in a lot of trouble.
But, I'm thinking Maura Healey is, they're pressuring her, but, she's trying to at least publicly put up a fight. The Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, you're starting to see some of these groups make calls on Lowell public officials. Over the weekend, Councilor Eric Gitcher got into a back and forth with one of the more militant Lowellians out there from the Solidarity Lowell crew about inaction on ICE. And this is a moral thing, and you should lead from the council even though you have nothing to do with it. What the bleep are these people talking about? Eric Gitcher, so Councilor Gitcher is basically telling the guy, listen, here's Elizabeth Warren's number, here's Ed Markey's number, here's Lori Trahan's number. Get in touch with them. I'm a city councilor. I have nothing to do with immigration, which is 110% the way the Lowell City Council should be handling this.
Yeah, it's not your role to get involved in these police activities. You fund the police, you do this, you do that. But I don't see why a city councilor should really, now they can if they want. I just don't see it. Why would you get, first of all, these people out in Worcester that were really going against the ICE agents, they had no idea what this individual was being charged with.
The woman was charged with beating her pregnant daughter.
Right. But that was like, 2017? Yeah. And I think she was deported, and she snuck back in.
She snuck back in, correct.
And now there's another charge. Did these people out there, the city council, or whoever these elected officials were, did they know that what the charges were? I doubt it.
No, they don't. That's what I'm saying. So
but they're still out there doing this.
But you end up in a situation like the senator from, was it from Maryland, who's down in El Salvador, and he's hanging out with a gangbanger who we now have found out was in a vehicle with trafficked human beings, slaves. Right. He's beaten his wife twice, allegedly, but multiple audio tapes. There are now released court documents of, her saying, I'm afraid of this guy. The father of the children, they're calling this guy a Maryland man. Those aren't even his kids. The father of the children is like, I don't want my kids anywhere around him. Sworn documents. So if you're a Democratic politician, what the hell are you doing throwing yourself into this fray where you're defending child rapers, wife beaters, and Lord knows what else, human and sex traffickers? Like, what are you doing? Why not just zip it? Fight the fight, try to win the next election to get something changed. But I don't think they're helping the cause.
I haven't seen Elizabeth Warren, and she's out there, AOC. I don't see them actually taking part in this. They're smart.
Yeah, because they're looking at a presidential run in 2028.
Right, and I think
they don't want to be Jasmine Crockett or the one out, what was her name?
You're
Monica.
Politician or an advocate, you don't get, in my opinion, you shouldn't be getting involved in these things when you don't know what the charge is going to be. You lack a lot of information. And now I think Peter Lucas had a good column today. There's that judge who tried to help someone escape. She's going before the lawyers' judicial committee. Oh, should Maura Healey be called down? She backed her. You know? So you start calling these people in who backed her? I think that's why you're starting to see a lot of elected officials start backing away. Because to call people, if you know, to show up at these arrests, you can't control it. When I used to work in campaigns, especially larger ones, you have these big rallies. And you have huge rallies, and busloads of people are coming in. You got to be careful because you don't know you don't know who's coming in, and you got to be very careful. So if you're asking people to show up at these events, you don't know what one person's action may lead to. And now you're the one calling them out. I don't know.
So will we see something similar to Worcester, New Jersey in Lowell? The Homeland Security Director, Tom Homan, over the weekend said, we're staying in Massachusetts. They clearly are in Lowell to a significant degree now. It's no longer whispers and a person here or there.
I think they're in Lawrence, too.
Yeah, they're all over the state. They have made Massachusetts a focal point of their Immigration Act action. So are we going to see Lowell politicians? Do you expect one of the Lowell city councilors to do? You say no.
I don't think so. You know, the thing is, you know, when Donald Trump got elected, number one was immigration, was the border. Now they're out picking up people. And the Democrats have done pretty good of the people who are, you know, they're trying to change the narrative. These are innocent people. Look at them. They're living normal lives and they're innocent. Well, they're not. They're here illegally, okay? And this is what he got elected to do. And you feel bad for some of them because they've been here a long time, but they're still here illegally. And I don't know. I think the president, I think he's losing the narrative now because of his actions. Some of these people are being detained without any charges. And it's not like they bring them back to the courthouse or the police station and interview them, and then some of these people have been held a few days, from my understanding, without charges. I just don't agree with that. But we'll see where it goes. I don't think you'll see a city council or a state rep or any elected official in Massachusetts take an active role. I'm more interested in what's going to happen with the HALO Act bill if it comes to a vote. Because if you vote against it, are you supporting these actions? And this is a bill that was a Democrat and a Republican who were both former police officers. That's the vote I'm interested in seeing.
All right. Are you sure you will not see any action? I would say no, because I think Lowell has done a pretty good job. The police doesn't seem to be getting involved. The city administration seems to be trying to, look, let's just keep quiet. Let's not call attention to ourselves. And yet, 2 weeks ago, there was a big discussion on the city council floor about DEI and the DEI commission in the city, and the fact that they haven't met, to the point where the manager then had to come out publicly and state at that meeting, look, we're trying to, not include anything that would jeopardize our ability to get federal grants. And I over the weekend, somebody said to me they've changed the DEI title in the budget. It's no longer going to be called DEI. So, and again, I assume this is because, look, we don't want to draw attention. Now, I don't know what the new duties of this woman are going to be. I don't know if she's still going to be doing the same thing, but not, actively, calling it that. But it's clear that the city administration wants to stay away from it. I also think it's clear that many of the councilors want to stay away from it.
Oh, yeah.
But there were enough who spoke a couple of weeks ago who questioned, why isn't the DEI commission meeting? And it's a campaign. There are some rather left-leaning people challenging incumbents. Will this become an issue? Will we start to see challengers? We always talk about, do the challengers do enough to differentiate themselves from the incumbents on these things? Would this be a potential issue? Would this be a potential issue where maybe if you're a challenger, say, hey, why not? Let's take a swing for the fences here and see if I can.
No, boy, you'd really be going out on a limb on that one. The one I'm interested in.
That's how you differentiate yourself.
Yeah, you do. But You know, after I left the council, I got some great advice from old timers. And they said, you know, when people run the council, every issue that comes up, they have an opinion on. Well, there's two sides to every opinion. So while you're talking to one of you saying, oh, I'll get this support, there's another side of the issue. And you hit enough of those buttons, I don't think it will be. I wish they had told me that before I got on the council, you know. But the one I'm looking for in Massachusetts is, and, you know, you talk to a lot of the police officers over the years, they really don't like to get involved in immigration because they have to work in the community. Sometimes they get informats and things like this. So it's a very touchy subject. But does the Trump administration come down now? Well, if they're not cooperating in Massachusetts with ICE, don't give them the money. This is what I'm afraid of down the line. And, you know, it's police work is very expensive. You look at the budgets, and when they have trials and they have investigations, and it's expensive. It can become very expensive. And I'm just hoping the administration or the Department of Justice or the FBI doesn't stop withholding funds from Massachusetts police departments.
They're going to start withholding in other areas that might be even more painful. So when Rodney Elliott was in here a couple of weeks ago, he told me about the House budget that they're hopefully going to finalize now. Yeah. Includes $48 billion in Medicaid.
Yeah.
$12 billion of that comes from the federal government.
Right.
If they are giving health benefits that they're not supposed to by federal money to these migrants, illegal immigrants, whatever you want to call them, it's the federal government claw that back. And I just point people to the unemployment money. Remember the COVID unemployment money where Charlie Baker kind of misused $2.1 billion and the Fed said, give it back. And Maura Healey said, yeah, we'll give it back. And they came up with a plan for how they're going to give it back. Now, she will fight as hell for this $12 billion, but how is that different?
You know,
how is that? Usually, Gavin Newsom out in California just said we got to get these folks off, because he knows the financial disaster that's about to hit California. Which, by the way, is interesting because I thought didn't your former party members tell me for 2 years that no, they're not allowed to. That's a fake story because they're not allowed to get food stamps and assistance and all this stuff.
Your show over the years that we did, you and I, Massachusetts giving out driver's licenses.
Yeah.
Now, you get a driver's license. Can you go down and apply? And I think, first of all,
yes, you can. That's the short answer. And they told us no, they can't. But now that they're kicking and screaming for that money being cut, it's clear that they've been giving away this money for years,
and I
even though
talked about that years ago, giving out the licenses. And I think the distractors have done a very good job. Trump has said, keep your hands off Medicare. But what they do is they put out and they kind of link Medicare and Medicaid, and the public eats it right up, and the media doesn't distinguish. Medicare will be no cuts. They're very clear about that. Medicaid, and now you look at a state like Massachusetts, how many people are on it? It shouldn't be.
Medicaid is AKA Mass Health in Massachusetts, where a significant number of people are on it.
Right. And what did I see recently? There was so many things it was paying for, and it was questionable if the people on there deserve it. So, we're going to see.
Well, I mean, so if you're one of these individuals, if you're one of these 26 to 28-year-olds who was told you have to buy insurance or you're going to get fined on your taxes, and I know a number of people who were, they have been paying an added penalty because they don't want to pick up insurance.
Right.
So you got fined for not having insurance, and then your state turned around and gave insurance for free to folks who aren't working. If you were working and you were not on Mass Health, you were fined for not getting a private insurance company.
Right.
But you gave free insurance to people who aren't working. And I mean, at some point, those bills come due, and at some point, people start to get a little bit angry.
It's going to be interesting what happens in Massachusetts, and I didn't see that part of the interview with Rodney. But Massachusetts, to my knowledge, was giving out licenses to make people, from what I understand, they could get the benefits.
Of course, Marty. They were taking medical things. They were taking vans over to the ICC and then bringing people to the local community health center. Where was that money coming from? Clearly, it was coming from Mass Health, and which again, 25% of comes from the federal government. $12 billion.
The funny part is I hear the advocates, and I love advocates. I love listening, whether I agree with them or not, because they advocate for cause. Have you heard Middle America screaming about any of these things? Nothing.
No.
You know, there was one poll I did find interesting. People, would you vote for Donald Trump again? And I think most people said, yeah. You know, they're not advocates for people who are here illegally. They really don't care. I mean, people are trying to pay their bills, put food on it. They don't care if I live or die. And they don't care if you live or die. And that's the reality of today's world.
They lean more on the die part for me.
But no, and people are so, with the cost of housing and food, people are so trying to survive on their own with their family. This other stuff, you know.
That's what they call it, kitchen. You remember? We're old enough to remember kitchen table issues.
Yeah,
that's.
And I haven't seen any charges on the people that they got in Lowell. I have no idea. I have no idea if they really.
I've asked the police, and they tell us they don't tell us anything.
No, they
ICE
don't.
does not tell us anything. They come in, they do their business, and we don't know a thing.
And that's the problem I have with some of the cases I've read where they've detained someone. And it was my understanding if the police detain you and they question you, at what point they'd have to charge you or let you go. And from what I've read, and it's only what I read in the media, some of these people have not officially been charged, and I don't know. I don't think that's right.
All right.
But if they're here illegally and you can't prove by documentation that you're supposed to be here, right away there's a charge.
That's the whole point of
That's
federal immigration enforcement. So I'm hoping they're not getting people who are here and have been living quietly and peacefully. I hope that they're still in the rounding up the criminals and the dangerous people phase. I believe that's what they're doing, other than a few, Middle East activists who, I don't think are as innocent as they're being made out to be. But we can debate that another time.
You own a business. Say you hire someone who's here illegally. What happens to you?
I'm screwed if they find it out.
Yeah, and very quickly, a friend of mine was down in Florida and went to football games. And I don't know if it was a cab driver or Uber. Anyway, the guy was telling the story. He came into the country illegally, and he got deported several years ago. He went to jail first. They put him in jail, then they deported him to his home country. He went back and applied legally to come in the United States, and the United States took him in. And now he's a citizen. So, they asked him, he was, I don't feel bad. He says, I did it. I went to jail before I was deported. And then I applied legally. And then he said, I'm all for Trump. But but those cases exist. We had cases in Lowell that I know of where someone was here and they violated the law and they went to jail and then were deported. So And we talked about it Saturday. Someone said, talk about Worcester. And I said, we brought up the fact that Obama deported more people than ever. And I got a text, well, with compassion. What's compassion? You walk into someone's house, grab someone, and deport them. Someone's not happy with you. They don't see it as compassion.
He was very compassionate.
It comes down to it's Donald Trump. But I think he should stop with these executive orders. He was elected for this and that, and sometimes I think he pushes buttons just to get the other side upset. But I think he's losing the narrative with the middle class.
100% on the pushing buttons. I agree with you. We're chatting with Marty Lorrey. Monday with Marty here on the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse. It's Monday, May 19th. We'll continue our discussion in a quick moment. Let me just thank our Daily Pulse sponsors here. We'll thank all of them this time. Ray Booten, licensed realtor, Mass in New Hampshire. Find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now. to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection in Greater Lowell, Southern New Hampshire since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in our communities through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, they bring all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City Thursday, May 29th. Their next game at the Tsongas Center. We've got Marty Lorrey here with us on Monday with Marty.
I just want to make the point that the people I knew were here legally. They were here legally. But after they were convicted of whatever they did, they were deported right afterwards, even though they were here legally.
Yeah, well, if you're here on a visa, you don't have necessarily the same protections as a U.S. citizen does. That visa is kind of like a permission slip. That's what a lot of these students who are here on student visas, they're falling back. It's like I should have this. I'm not getting my due process. You actually are, because your process is not the same. Marco Rubio is very good about kind of spelling out the differences.
But
people don't like it, but it is reality. That's why when they talk about, last week there was a discussion, I forget which, it was with Tara Hung, and they were talking about teaching civics in classes. I'm like, are they really teaching civics? Are they really teaching the Constitution when they're teaching, or are they teaching activism? Because the Constitution clearly defines different roles for different levels of citizens and immigrants.
When I was in high school, I forget if we had civics when I first got there, but we had teachers. Some of them were younger, some of them older. They encouraged involvement. Of course, I wasn't around in the 60s. I was too young. I went to high school from 1970 to 1974. But you were encouraged to go out and get involved. Not violently, but let people know what your feelings were. And, after the 60s, the 1970s came along, it was people were so tired of the fighting, they went to marijuana and booze. And it was a laid back like the Eagles and the Fleetwood Mac for 10 years, But no, and I thought when the education we received was great, but don't be afraid to get involved and be a spokesperson or an advocate for a cause. But nothing wrong with that.
But know what you're getting involved in. Know
what you're getting involved in.
Don't go out there and be claiming, you have no right to do XYZ when it kind of is spelled out in the Constitution.
But I think you have a couple of arrests. One will be that judge in Wisconsin. I guess she's been charged.
Yeah, she's going through the legal process now.
She's going to be it.
Ironically, her defense is she's got complete control and immunity of her courtroom, just like President Trump did in his emoluments.
Well, she was in the hallway, wasn't she?
She's using the emoluments thing, which, by the way, interesting, worth a try. I'm not sure it's going to work, but we shall see. Speaking of number 47, they wanted to 86 number 47, James Comey.
I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea.
I didn't either, and then I figured it out after a while, although I found out this 86, my 86 in the restaurant industry is, well, you're out of a food item.
Right, right.
So kill it from the menu, right? Kill it from the POS system. 86 in the mob was take him 8 miles into the woods, bury him 6 foot deep. I've also heard that 8 feet is the standard length of a casket, and 6 feet is how much they bury you down. So, James Comey can play cute and whatnot. Ultimately, it's not going to matter. He's got a book to sell, and it worked. You told me because of his 8647 seashells, you bought the book over the weekend.
I went to the book sale, North Andover book sale, $15 a bag, and there was really not much I wanted to buy. I bought a book on General Patton, the Polish Army. If you want to read World War, the Polish story is great. And then I saw James Comey, and I looked, I got to read what this guy has to say, because now he's front page again, But how stupid can you be to take a picture, I guess he did, and put it on social media? I mean,
Stupid or arrogant?
I don't know.
He thinks he's untouchable, and he probably is. I mean, look, in the grand scheme of things, if you or I did it right, we'd get a visit from the FBI or the Secret Service, and they'd read us the Riot Act, put a little fear in us, and we'd very smartly stop doing it. I anticipate Comey may get the same, maybe, right? Do they want to be jerks and really, try to prosecute him?
I
Maybe.
it's such a stupid thing. You know, getting interference with ICE is one thing. Putting something in the sand that could be construed as a plan to assassinate a president.
A call to assassinate him for somebody who's
right.
Hey, look, there's been 2 attempts against him already.
Right. Two attempts against Trump, and you know, you kind of draw the line there that they'll question him. I don't know what's going to come. I didn't know what 86 would have meant nothing to me. I would have played it on Keno.
So
you know,
ironically, actually, you know what? The daily number 8647.
Yeah. That's how I would have played it.
I like it. Unfortunately for loyal fans of the former president, Joe Biden, we may be 86-46, and it may not have anything to do with an assassination. A bad week for Joe Biden. The Her tapes started coming out when he was questioned about his mishandling of classified documents, and they portray a very feeble old man, as the special prosecutor of Her said. This guy did, basically Her said this guy did something, but if I put him in front of a jury, no jury's going to convict him. He's feeble. And you heard the audio, and it's as bad as we thought, maybe worse. And you know what's even stunning? He had notes. He kept saying, like, oh, I don't know, let me look, it's over here. So his staff had prepared him with notes, and he still couldn't remember when his vice presidency ended, when his presidential campaign was, which now he's got a stage, what is it, stage 9 or level, something level 9 prostate cancer thing, which, that's really, don't you get
presidents get great care, so that's why I was surprised.
They missed it?
Maybe
it's a turbo cancer.
The thing with Biden, a year before the election, I had predicted he wouldn't be the candidate. And people have got to stop reading the paper and watch with their eyes and listen with their ears. He was obviously having issues. I know it's hard to run against a president. Jimmy Carter, probably one of the reasons why he got beat so bad is Ted Kennedy ran against him. You don't run against a sitting president, your own party. That's the rule. So I think people stayed back, but it was obvious the man was having issues. I picked up on it, and I'm not the brightest bulb in the tree.
Marty, if we're going to be honest now, and come on, all you people who didn't believe your own eyes, your lying eyes were deceiving you, or you just told me I was an idiot, everybody knew it in 2020.
Yeah.
The man was not right in 2020. That's why they hit him in a basement. He had nothing to do with COVID. He couldn't go out and campaign. He was unable to do it. But here's the question it begs. So now we know this guy was clearly impaired. Hey, look, Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, 2 left-leaning journalists, have now published a book. They're trying to make money. Are you going to buy that book too, like you did Comey's?
We'll see what they get charged with.
But they're now acknowledging what they themselves denied all these years. The man was not right. He was not physically and probably not cognitively able to make those decisions. So if you and I could see it, if everybody out there could see it, if the reporters covering could see it but wouldn't say a word about it, who's making decisions in the White House? Donald Trump keeps asking that. Who was using the auto pen? Who was making the proclamations and the decisions?
That came up in the Reagan administration too. He was hurt in his last couple of years, and that was a discussion right through the 90s, who was working in the state. And I'm trying to think, some of the staffers did come out, and I think Nancy Reagan was the one who glued and held everyone together with the help of a few. But I don't know if Reagan was as in serious trouble as that I saw with Biden. And I voted for Biden in 2020. He was just, his last year was just.
Yeah, by Reagan's last year, it was noticeable. And then he quickly disappeared from the public limelight, passed the torch to Bush at the 88 GOP convention, gave his farewell address, was there on Inauguration Day, and then you never saw him again. Nancy put him on ice. Dr. Jill keeps trotting him out. She had him on The View 2 weeks ago. I mean, what is this woman doing?
No idea. Joe Biden had an illustrious career in the Senate. I always thought he was a good senator.
A centrist.
A centrist.
Many of his decisions as president fly in the face of how he governed for 30 years. It's almost as if he wasn't making those decisions. Somebody else was.
Well, one of the only problems I ever had with Joe Biden was during the Bork nominations, whether he liked Bork or not. He would start off like every day, this is going to be a fair process. Well, it wasn't a fair process. Everyone knew it. But I always thought Biden was a centralist. He was a great on foreign affairs. He's one of the senators I really, really liked throughout his career. And to see him go out this way, it's just horrible.
Yeah. Do you think the cancer diagnosis is new, or do you think they just went public with it because he was having a bad week based on the Tapper book and her revelation?
The worst part of all of this is not for Biden with the news of how he deteriorated, but for the Democrats, because now they're calling into question many of the leading Democrats. Well, you said he was healthy, and here's tapes of you saying, and they knew he wasn't, and now that's a big issue for the Democrats.
And so they clearly lied to you. So why would you believe another word that they say about anything? If they'll lie to you about something as obvious as Biden's health and mental acuity, do you think they'd lie to you about a jet from Qatar?
I mean, that came up on a show Saturday.
There's my transition.
I don't have a problem with it. A lot of people do. It smells bad.
They think he's going to keep the jet. That the thought, what they're saying is he's going to keep the jet himself. He's not going to hand it over to the United States military for use as Air Force One. Hell, a reporter in the Lowell Sun had that in that whole diatribe in the column. I mean,
one of the things
I think these folks are unhinged. I'll be quite honest with you.
Anything he does, and he does it purposely, like when he was going to run for a third term, and it just sets them off. My original understanding was Qatar wanted to pay for this.
They started negotiations with Joe Biden on this. These negotiations were started with Joe or whoever was pulling strings with Joe Biden.
Yeah, and it goes back to pre-Trump, but it was going to be built by Boeing, like Air Force One, and go to a presidential library. I'll never get inside Air Force One, but if it went to a presidential library, at least people would have the opportunity to see what it was like.
What Air Force One looks like.
Yeah, because to my understanding, like if you go to the JFK library, much of the stuff he collected over the years is down there.
But wait a second, doesn't the Reagan Library have a plane? I remember watching those debates in 2016, and they were doing them from the Reagan Library, and they were in front of like a jet.
They may very well.
So maybe there is something to it. But I think the Qatar jet thing, just like I think the Biden cancer thing, I think they've known for a long time Biden had cancer, maybe for years. He himself said it in 2021 that he had cancer, and everyone said, "Oh no, he meant in the past, his skin cancer." But what did Joe know and let slip? I'll put that aside. I think the timing of the cancer announcement is meant to distract from the her tapes and the Tapper book, just like I think the jet fake outrage is to distract from this. While he was in the Middle East last week and everybody was talking about the jet, Donald Trump got a commitment of $2 trillion from Middle Eastern countries, $600 billion investment from Saudi Arabia, $1.2 trillion economic exchange agreement with Qatar, $1.2 trillion.
Yeah.
$243.5 billion in U.S. Qatar commercial and defense deals, and another $200 billion in U.S. United Arab Emirates commercial deals.
That was the one I was.
$2 trillion in investment in the United States of America. Now, a lot of that will be in military equipment, right? Air Force One might be counted. The new Air Force One might be counted in those numbers, but that's a good week for the president of the United States. And in the meantime, he's beginning to get a little bit of movement on Russia and Ukraine, albeit very slowly, too slowly. But he's supposedly starting to make a little movement on Israel, Hamas, and it's a really good week for the president. So why talk about that if you're CNN or MSNBC? Yeah, you got to talk about a jet.
We had Terry Downs on the radio Saturday.
One of my favorite people in the
city. Terry's a great guy. And I started off a little bit different. Most people don't pay attention to India and Pakistan, two countries really at odds, and they have nuclear weapons. That's not going to take a lot to ignite. What he did in Ukraine was he got the rights, the mineral rights. Now U.S. personnel are going to be in the Ukraine. Companies, maybe military, maybe not. But there are going to be U.S. people in the Ukraine. What happens if Putin or the Russians kill Americans? They've got a major problem. And this may be the way he backdoors it. They're going to have to sit with, he's not going to tell Trump, well, if you put your people there, it's a war zone, we know. And Terry was talking about the number of drones that the Ukrainians have used to destroy fuel stations and everything else. But, you know, you look at if that's his road to peace in the Ukraine, well, maybe that's fine. But the Middle East, he's taken a different tack from everyone else. His has been economic. He talked about rebuilding Gaza Strip. Everyone laughed. I was laughing about it. But is he right? You know,
He was, because now Saudi Arabia is going to do it. So
Now-
we're going to get what he said we were going to get, and the U.S. doesn't have to pay for it.
and now you get Syria. Syria has always been.
That's right. Syria, India, and Pakistan. That was a phenomenal foreign policy week.
It really
Number
was.
47.
Syria has really been a problem for the United States. They were funneling money with the terrorists. Now you get a new government. The forgotten people in the Middle East are the Christians, the Middle Eastern Christians. I belong to a church where there's Syrian, Lebanese.
Are there any left there, or have they all been driven out?
I don't know. And the discrimination, from what I had heard, was really bad. You could leave your churches open, but beyond that. But now you got a new government, and a new government that wants to build an economy and to promote its own people with this mass exodus. It's an amazing event to get Syria, and that hurts. These events hurt two countries more than anyone else. Well, three: Iran, Russia, and China. Those
The
are the
real
three.
enemy. The third one's the real enemy. Remember
Yeah,
that.
you know. Well, you know, it's funny. There was an American general on a couple of years ago I was watching, and before 9/11, before they found Bin Laden, they had an interview with him that he talked about, and he said the United States will be on a downfall. The sides will be China, Pakistan, Iran. I think it might have been North Korea. Those four countries will have a pact. And Pakistan, nuclear weapons. We're close to India, and of course China. But you're right. In my opinion, it's always going to be the Chinese who are.
Sure. And that's and the folks losing their mind over the tariffs thing. That's the real target of the tariffs. And
He
you're
dropped
seeing,
the tariffs with China.
right, but you're seeing the Chinese economy is tanking now. They're literally imploding cities that they built.
Greg Pappas was on. We did a show together, 4 hours, and we talked about China. Now, Greg has some great inside stuff. Greg was talking about.
He'll be here tomorrow, by the way.
Ask him about China. Greg told me weeks ago that China was having problems, economic problems. They were on the downturn. Their government is unstable.
Yep.
And Greg is just phenomenal with this information. And I just
I'm
sat there
telling
and
you, he's
listened.
CIA, but nobody will believe me. He keeps denying
I've known
it. But
Greg so long. It was phenomenal. But ask Greg about China. He said they're in trouble.
I will tomorrow.
And this Middle Eastern deal hurts them.
Yeah.
It hurts Iran, and it hurts.
And
Russia.
you mentioned Iran. There was actually some potential talk that there would be high-level meetings with Iran
Yeah, I
coming up as well. So
I won't be surprised.
So a phenomenal foreign policy week for the president, and yet we're going to talk about the jet. All right, I want to bring it back to Lowell, the Lowell School Committee, InsideLowell.com over the weekend story. It's the first time I've delved into detail. We've done it here on the Daily Pulse on the Lowell School Committee race, but Jackie Doherty still undecided. That's the question everyone asks. Is Jackie running? Is Jackie not running? New name popped up either in Centerville, running against Eileen Del Rossi,
Right, I
or
saw that.
running at large, she told me. Zoe Zaniku, last seen politically challenging running against Rodney Elliott in the Democratic primary in the 16th Middlesex District in 2022. She was a former aide to Senator Ed Kennedy, election commissioner in the city of Lowell during the whole Dominic Lay thing. But she worked for the school department. My understanding is she left the school department in December of 2024. She confirmed for me she's thinking about a run,
Sure.
either in District 2 or is at large. Now, so the school committee, which only had no at-large challengers, now has multiple. Danielle McFadden, Bob Hoey, who has on Facebook last week said I'm going to make it official. Yeah, but and maybe Zoe, if Jackie Doherty stays in that race, you've got a primary in the school committee.
You do, and I was surprised. I think. Well, I don't run her campaign. I really don't know her. couple of years ago on doing a show with you and Jerry, I predicted that Hillary Clark would be upset by Eileen Del Rossi because the turnout in Belvedere is going to, and Centerville was going to be so big. They're going to see where she lives in bingo. She's going to get the mark, and she did win. I saw Corey's fundraiser and his lit. I think she's honored as a co-sponsor.
Corey Robinson,
right?
District 2 Centerville. Yeah, I think the people who kind of put the party on from the fundraising parties,
right? Mona Tyree, and I think she was on there. So Corey really doesn't have an opponent that I've seen yet.
Nope.
So there's not going to be a big turnout. So the people who come out are going to vote for Corey. That would be a big step for her because they might come in and vote for her because she supports Corey.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of folks attributed, as you said, Eileen Del Rossi's success in 2021, upsetting Hillary Clark, to the turnout in Centerville. But a lot of folks had kind of tied the two of them together. The thought was Corey dragged vote. And now, was that just incidental?
No.
Or was it a Centerville thing?
If you see in Massachusetts, Teddy, the Democrats, when they run down ballot. Strong senator, Congress, governor race, and you come down ballot. And so I was doing a show with you on the radio station at the time, and I said she would win because of that reason. This is how I look at elections, that she would get that vote and beat Hillary Clark, who had a great career on the school committee. Even election night, Jerry said, "What do you think is going to happen?" I said, "Eileen Del Rossi will win." And it came right in, and Jerry said, "Boy." So I think
it wasn't even close, which I kind of took most of us by surprise.
It was, well, you had Bob Gignac and Corey on the ballot. Now you're just probably going to have Corey. Now she's a co-sponsor. I had people come up to me recently because I said, geez, if I was close with Corey Belanger, I'd say, you might want to run citywide because the turnout in Belvedere is going to be so big. Even if you're not on that, you're going to get a ton of that vote, and that could carry you in the general election. I mean, it's just speculation, but I've had people say to me, you might be right about that with Corey. And I don't know if I am. It's just my political.
So what's interesting, further complicating the situation, is when I spoke to Zoe, we traded texts on Friday night before publishing the article. She gave me a statement, but she also said, it's kind of, I'm really undecided because, I'm looking at the at-large race. I also like Eileen, meaning Eileen Del Rossi. She goes, so I like Eileen, but are you going to challenge her? So we know Connie Martin. Connie Martin has told me she's running, barring a last-second surprise.
Connie will run.
Connie Martin is running. I'm pretty sure she's running. Jackie Doherty has told me she's undecided. Multiple people, and I'm talking a handful plus people that have worked with her, people that currently work with her, people that go to the same banks that she does her businesses, have said she has told them she's not running. She's already said, I'm done. The word was, I'm done.
You don't make it, but you don't make it official until you have to.
She's saying, I'm holding the budget process. She's waiting for the budget process. She did tell me it's difficult to walk away given the budget situation and the need. However, multiple meetings now, public speakers, not fellow politicians, not fellow electeds, public speakers, including at last Wednesday's school committee budget speaking, a speaker got up there and basically said she shouldn't even be voting on this. She's not living in the district.
That's her opinion. I don't know who the speaker is, but
I forget the lady's name. But if you go watch the meeting, all the meetings are there when they were having the budget debate, and the public speakers go, and there was a lady openly called her out. Now, look, Jackie Doherty and her husband built a house up in Rye. It's been done, I believe, for a while. There was, things were, I think I was still at the radio at the time that it came out.
I think they also own a home on Pawtucket Street.
Correct.
Near the ice cream stand. And they had one in the Highlands for years.
Yeah. And which brings in the Dominic Lay thing.
I was just going to say, look at Dominic Lay.
If Jackie Doherty is registered to vote in Lowell, which she is, if Jackie Doherty has continued to vote in Lowell, regardless of where her summer home is, whatever homes, she could have 8 homes. If she's registered to vote in Lowell and does actually vote in Lowell, which she does, then she is able to represent the people in Lowell. That was told me by Dominic Lay's attorney, Roland Millard. It was confirmed for me by then Secretary of State's office election guy, Greg Pappas. Where you register to vote is where your residence.
When that first came out with Dominic, at least 2 people asked me, if you go to the house that he has listed in Belvedere and in the Highlands, his name's not on the mailbox. What does that mean? He didn't put his name on the mailbox.
Absolutely nothing.
That's all it means.
My name isn't on my mailbox either. It's too long.
You know, it means absolutely nothing. And I like Dominic personally, so I mean, I felt bad for him during this whole process. And he's a great guy. But yeah, where you vote is where, from what I understand, is where you live.
That's where you can serve. That's where you run for office. That was my understanding. That's not a debate. People can think anything they want. Personally, I tend to believe the folks who are telling me that she said she's done. I don't think she wants to say it yet because I don't think she wants to be a lame duck during the budget situation. Right. But if I had to guess, Jackie Doherty's not running, meaning we'll have at least one new face on the school committee. I've
seen cases where people would not announce that they're not running again, or they would run to keep someone off a ballot. You remember when it was 6 or 9?
Oh, yes.
So-and-so saying, if he doesn't run, I'm running. So they know someone who might run. They just don't say a word. You know, are you going to run? I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. You want to make it up for me? Go ahead. But, you know, I've seen that over the years. So it's very touchy. The thing that I found with the school department this year that's blowing up, and we talked about it in January, I said there would be a fight between the school department over the money. There's a rumor going out that the city councilors cut the school department, you know, some of the budget. Well, they haven't even met on the city budget yet. And I think it might have been 𝐰𝐢𝐭𝐡.
Well, it's a proposal that they're going to cut $4 million.
Right, but it hasn't even been voted on yet. And so, you know, the rumors are out there. And this is how, if I'm an advocate, this is what you put out there. Oh, they're cutting our budget. Who is? Well, it's in the budget to cut it. Well, it hasn't been done yet. Well, it's right. That's what advocates do. Yeah,
from what I could gather at that last school committee meeting, they're supposedly cutting jobs that didn't exist. So how can you cut a job that hasn't existed yet? You propose it to exist, but it hasn't existed yet. And how do you cut 15 paraprofessionals when you have 46 paraprofessional openings?
Municipal
somewhere
budget,
thereabouts. It's a shell game, Marty.
It's always has municipal budgets. Department heads will put in jobs that they haven't filled. Why? Because they want that money in the budget. If the person makes $50,000 with benefit, there's $50,000 in your budget. If you don't fill a job, even better. And so municipal budgets have done this for years. And you know what? The people like town managers, superintendents, they don't mind because you know what? They can always pull that money back and use it in other parts of the budget.
All right. I got a couple of minutes before I send you on your merry way, I hope. I have a couple of minutes. If not, I'm keeping you
drag on sometime.
No, this is good stuff. I want to get to some feedback that's come in over some shows recently. First, Linda in Lowell regarding the Zach Bryan news. He's buying the old St. John Baptiste Church to create the 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 Museum. Linda writes, I like Zach Bryan, but why in the hell would anyone fund a museum dedicated to an alcoholic's drunken ramblings? Baffling. I've seen a lot of that on social media. There were people who love 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥, worship him. We have a 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥 weekend and festival every single year. There are people who feel much like Linda. Why are we celebrating this guy?
Well, we should. He grew up in Lowell, very successful. I took a course. I never liked the 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥 books. So when I was in college, I took a book called The Beats, a class. I wanted to find out what this was. And I read On the Road in probably 2 days. It was that good. Bingo.
Really?
And
I couldn't do it. I started reading it and I'm like, I can't get into this.
I wrote a paper on it. We had to do papers. And I wrote that what 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥 did in the 1940s and 50s, he foresaw the 1960s. If you remember, he's down there with the migrants down south. And within a few years, Cesar Chavez has that big union down there. He talked about the jazz clubs in San Francisco, and I guess Chicago or Detroit. Jazz became very popular. If you look at what 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥 writes, and the guy said to me, I've never seen anyone write anything or take it this way. Well, I'm a history major. But he really foretells what's going to come up in the next 20 years. And I thought that was fascinating. Beyond that, I don't know if it's the right building. I'm glad.
Well, but it's the church he was buried in, the church.
But what are you going to put in there? That's a big place to have it.
Listen,
you know?
some big country star who likes Jack Kerouac's got the money. I'm sure he's got some more rich friends. I will take any investment in Lowell, especially in that neighborhood. Think about the transformation there, right? Marty brought the university across the Merrimack to University Crossing. Now we're starting to see the Jeanne d'Arc developments, all this, Acre Crossing, all these other things going on Market and Merrimack Street. That part, you wouldn't be caught dead driving through some of those neighborhoods 20 years ago, let alone walking to a museum. I am, bring it in. Zach, Brian, bring in some friends. Let's
spend all the money you want. I mean, really.
Let's get somebody to do a boxing museum or something in the Smith Baker. Let's go.
We did the history of boxing with Muhammad Ali when I was doing work with Ali. It's just such a big building. I don't know how they're going to do it. But as far as that part of the acre, I still walk a lot in Lowell. One thing the CBA never gets credit for is they do a lot of housing over there, and they're very strict on their housing. 30 years ago, you wouldn't walk up Moody Street.
Of course not.
Now I walk, I have no problem walking 6, 7 at night. And I thought when I was on the council, Marty was taking over the old St. Joe's and everything, and we debated that, whether it was good or not. I thought the city should have been really pushing development in that area quicker, because to me it was a go sign. But good luck with it. I'm glad they have a Kerouac Center. Congratulations to them. I just hope it works out.
All right. George Ferdinand from Tewksbury said the extort MBTA communities mandate law is a POS. POS is in my restaurant thing again. Point of sale system. Is that what he means by POS?
Watch for that be a big issue in the gubernatorial race. The Republicans are going to hit that. Towns are not happy with it.
Will Maura Healey follow through on her threats to withhold funding for communities that do it? They've gone to court with Milton and they've won, but to my knowledge, they have yet to withhold any funding that they give communities.
You won in court. Now you're going to be on the ballot. There's two different things. There's light years. We talked about this for years, Teddy, you and I. Massachusetts was losing residents. Well, we have a housing shortage, affordable housing. Why? We're losing residents. I don't understand this.
Well, because you're bringing in broke residents.
Well,
intentionally.
I Googled again and I started doing some research. We have, 900,000 migrants. They're taking them out of the shelter and they need a place to live. Now, is this the reason why we have because they don't have a lot of money, I doubt. So is this the reason why you have a affordable housing shortage?
There's organizations out there. There's a home base that gives money for 30, what was it, like $2,500 a year, $25,000 a year, over $2,000 a month.
But watch for the Republicans to key in on that. There's a lot of cities and towns that don't want it. Watch that to be an issue. If you're going to run for state rep and you're a Republican in these towns, there's your issue.
Let me ask you a question. If you owned rental properties and somebody came to you and you got to get financial information, right? Right. And they told you, I'm getting it funded by home base or whatever, they're giving me over $2,000 a month. Are you going to charge less than $2,000 a month for rent?
No, that's and this has been going on for years. As a mailman, I used to see it, and I was glad because people would buy these properties. They had a lot of money, and they would invest money into them, and so you see them get their investment back because what it did was it kept up the properties with many of the owners. They were able to keep the properties up.
All right. So. One more comment. Ozzo, he was upset that I was talking about advocates and whether their money's going to help the people, the homeless, the poor, the hungry, or whatever, or is the money going to political advocacy? Ozzo writes, program advocates at LTLC, Lowell Transitional Living Center, work directly with THA residents. By the way, Ozzo, can we stop with this? Just post the alphabet. None of these crazy things in this. Come on, let's grow up. Let's post the alphabet, please. THA residents. They are frontline staff. Teddy loves making stuff up to fit his agenda without any knowledge of what he speaks. Time and time again, when it comes to anyone who happens to find themselves in a situation where they're economically disadvantaged and/or underserved.
Watch the budget talks. Right now, the Republicans are under heavy attack for their cuts. Doge.
Correct.
Well, when Doge comes out with some of these cuts, what they like to distribute is the information of how much is administrative cost.
Yep.
So if I have an agency and I get $1 billion to run that agency, what's the administrative cost? And that's what's coming out in a lot of these issues. I don't know what they are. God bless the advocates. Like I said, many of them take these cases that no one else will take, and they push for them. God bless them. But now you're starting to see the real cost and where the money's going. Be careful of that one. So don't pick up the argument until you know where your ducks are.
Yeah, I looked at the financials for UTEC a few weeks back.
I saw that, yeah.
They were crying about potentially losing $2 million in grants. I'm like, dude, those guys, those guys make a bigger profit than IBM, for Christ's sakes.
Let's take a nonprofit like CTI. It's about $80 million.
Over $100 million budget.
It is.
At last check.
Now, I remember CTI back in the 60s and 70s. I'm trying to think who the director was. But anyway, they were so efficient at taking over some of these programs, housing, heating, that the state actually cut those out of the budget. They would take that whole industry and just take it out, and they would funnel it to CTI. And one of the reasons why I think CTI was so successful, if it was a government agency, you had 100 employees, but when that money runs out, those people stay. Well, CTI, they don't. You stay as long as the grant. And they might train you for another one. But CTI has been very successful in taking this money, doing the work that needs to be done, without really keeping a staff over the years. They've been an amazing story. I don't know what the future is. Karen and Bill Lipschitz, Karen, they did a phenomenal job. I don't know what the future is, but God bless those two. They were great.
I think you'll see, well, it's a lot of what you're saying. They're going to take over programs. I think you'll eventually see some of these bigger nonprofit organizations swallow up some, because there's like a million, like, yeah, when I had Melody Gilbert in here from the Sun, she was talking about this like 12 different soup kitchens.
Right.
I'm like, do you need 12 different soup? How about one place under one umbrella, somebody who already does it? Do you need all these different organizations? And that was the point I was kind of making, that Ozzo was going up. Like, it's almost like they're creating jobs for people, and most of the advocacy is political. By the way, Ozzo, you've been politicking on the city council floor. I'm not sure you're helping the residents directly when you're on the city floor getting gavelled away for talking too much.
All these advocates have a board, and their mission is the most important thing to them. And they sincerely believe that. So even though there's 12 soup kitchens, let's say, your mission is the most important one because you do it right. And that's where it comes in. And it's also territorial. I don't care where you go in any agency.
There's only X amount of dollars,
There's only
Marty.
X amount of dollars.
The taxpayers can only fund so much. The donors can only fund so much. A lot of these organizations also hold fundraisers and raise money. Here's my biggest thing. Has it gotten better or worse? Has the homeless situation in Lowell gotten better or worse since we have these, how many different alphabet soups that are running around and servicing the homeless? Have we eliminated hunger, or are we counting more? When I heard the superintendent of schools say 1 in 10 Lowell students is homeless, first of all, what we're classifying as homeless isn't what most people think of as homeless. Maybe in terms of getting funding, it's homeless, but if you've got a roof over your head, you're not necessarily homeless.
Well, there's another issue. My understanding is if you're homeless and you came from like Woburn to Lowell, they have to pay for your transportation to go to the school in the city or town where you're from.
Of course they do. Look at that Lowell school department budget and transportation
big
costs.
Chunk. But you got to be careful with attacking these cuts. Those came under a lot of attack. Those, Trump, they're cutting, it's not the words provisional employees, okay? Well, when you have a provisional employee, you have no rights. You're over there for 3 months. They were cutting seasonal. They were cutting provisional. And then once they made the cuts, they would come back and look and say, okay, we're going to bring this back. So when people started attacking, they were using the wrong terminology. He's cutting permanent employees. When you're seasonal, it's not the same. It really isn't.
Well, when you're trying to deceive people about what's really happening, you're going to use wrong terminology, aren't you?
But the thing is, here's the other problem, and I know this only because of my background. The Democrats and Joe Biden could have, with the signature of pen and a vote when they had both houses, could have made those jobs permanent. and they didn't. Okay, if I'm with the union and I get Biden in there and the Democrats have the Senate, you're pushing for them to sign that bill to make those jobs. That's what you do, and it didn't happen. So I'm not saying I'm with Doge on all of this, but you know, you got to be careful how you fight those battles.
All right, Monday with Marty Lorrey, always good, my friend. Although tomorrow I mentioned I have Greg Pappas coming.
Oh,
in.
he's good.
I have to get a show together with the two of you just to talk about this China stuff and CIA stuff, and maybe I have not been successful in getting Greg to admit he was or is still with the CIA. Maybe you can get it out of
Greg and I have always had a relationship. When I was doing, Greg sat on the state committee with.
Yeah, you guys were good Democrats back when they were Democrats.
I was with the cities and towns, and this is why you're going to lose the party. The progressives work hard. They are very active. Now you're going to have Maura Healey on the ballot, and they're going to go. And when you see they have these things in the cities and towns to send delegates, they're going to be very active. So they're going to go, and they're going to. People like me, I left the party. They're going to go and they're going to control the delegates to the state convention, and they're going to support Maura Healey, and they're going to support their candidates. The only way you could get out of it is to have people like myself who were more centralist rejoin the party, show up, go to these things, run like I used to do. I used to have to run to go to the conventions, and then you can start trying to find. Remember, what's her name? Diane 𝐷𝐤𝐲. She needed 15%. She barely got it. And years ago, John Silber, who was a good candidate, could not get. Billy Bulger got it for him. And so that's how they control it.
All righty. We'll get you back in a couple of weeks. We'll get you in here with Greg Pappas as well. Marty Lorrey.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Counselor. Thank you as always. Thanks to Marty Lorrey. Thanks to you as well for joining us here on the Daily Pulse, Monday, May 19th. Tomorrow, as we mentioned, Greg Pappas will be with us. On Wednesday, we'll have my co-host and former Lowell Mayor Bill Samaras. City Councilor Corey Belanger will be here. I got something booked Thursday. Oh, Liam Skinner, Low School Superintendent Liam Skinner. I've been looking forward to this one for a couple of weeks now. And then on Friday, we will celebrate our 100th Daily Pulse with, who else? The Pod Squad. Mike Bacigalupo, Michaela Hondras McCarthy, a.k.a. Batch, and the Hyphen. We've got a full week of Daily Pulses. It drops every day at noon here on InsideLowell.com. As we like to say, if Lowell is your home, this is your place. Until next time, everybody stay safe, stay warm. It's a little chilly out there today, and I'll catch you on the other side.